Cloudtts. Walking in the Footsteps of the Buddha. Author Thich Nhat Hanh. Book 3. Chapter 61. The Lion's Roar. That same retreat season, Ananda asked a question about dependent co-arising, and so the Buddha taught the bhikkhus about the 12 links in the chain of existence. He explained, the teaching on dependent co-arising is most profound and subtle. Do not think it can be grasped through words and discourse. Bhikkhus, thanks to hearing the teaching on dependent co-arising, Venerable Uravelakasapa entered the path of true Dharma. Venerable Sariputta, another of our most respected brothers, entered the path thanks to hearing a gatha concerning dependent co-arising. Contemplate the nature of dependent co-arising during every moment. When you look at a leaf or a raindrop, meditate on all the conditions, near and distant, that have contributed to the presence of that leaf or raindrop. Know that the world is woven of interconnected threads. This is, because that is. This is not, because that is not. This is born, because that is born. This dies, because that dies. The birth and death of any dharma are connected to the birth and death of all other dharmas. The one contains the many and the many contains the one. Without the one, there cannot be the many. Without the many, there cannot be the one. This is the marvelous truth of the teaching on dependent co-arising. If you look deeply into the nature of all dharmas, you will be able to transcend all anxiety concerning birth and death. You will break through the circle of birth and death. Bhikkhus, the interconnected links consist of many layers and levels, but for realms can be distinguished: chief causes, contributory causes, the immediately preceding moment as cause, and objects as cause. A chief cause is the first condition necessary to give rise to a phenomenon. For example, a grain of rice is the chief cause necessary to give rise to a rice plant. Contributory causes are supportive conditions. In the case of a grain of rice, these include sun, rain, and earth, which enable the seed to grow into a rice plant. The immediately preceding moment as cause is an uninterrupted process and serves as an underlying cause. Without this continual process, the rice plant's growth would be interrupted before reaching fruition. Objects as cause refer to objects of consciousness. A grain of rice and all the near and distant conditions that make the presence of the rice plant possible are objects of consciousness. They cannot be separated from consciousness. Mind is a basic condition for the existence of all dharmas. Bhikkhus, suffering exists because of the presence of birth and death. What gives rise to birth and death? Ignorance. Birth and death are first of all mental notions. They are the product of ignorance. If you look deeply and penetrate the causes of all things, you will overcome ignorance. Once you have overcome ignorance, you will transcend all thoughts of birth and death. Transcending all thoughts of birth and death, you will overcome all anxieties and sorrows. Bhikkhus, there is the concept of death because there is the concept of birth. These wrong views are based on a false view of the self. There is a false view of the self because there is grasping. There is grasping because there is desire. There is desire because one does not see into the true nature of feelings. One does not see into the true nature of feelings because one is caught up in the contact that takes place between the sense organs and their objects. One is caught up in the contact that takes place between the sense organs and their objects because one's mind is not clear and calm. One's mind is not clear and calm because there are drives and impulses. These drives and impulses are due to ignorance. These 12 links of the chain of existence are connected to each other. In each link, you can see the other 11 links. If one link is missing, the other 11 will be missing. These 12 links are death, birth, becoming, grasping, craving, feelings, contact, the 6 sense organs, name and form, consciousness, drives and impulses, and ignorance. Because ignorance underlies all 12 links of the chain of existence. Thanks to the contemplation on the nature of dependent co-arising, we can dispel ignorance in order to transcend all anxieties and sorrows. An enlightened person walks over the waves of birth and death and does not drown in them. An enlightened person uses the 12 links of the chain of existence like the wheels of a carriage. An enlightened person lives in the very midst of the world, but is never submerged by it. Because, do not try to run away from birth and death. You need only rise above them. Transcending birth and death is the attainment of great beings. In a Dharma discussion several days later, Venerable Mahakassapa reminded the community that the Buddha had given the teaching on dependent co-arising many times in the past, and that this teaching could be considered the heart of the way of awakening. He reminded the community that the Buddha had once used a bunch of reeds to illustrate the teaching on dependent co-arising. The Lord had said that things do not need a creator, that they arise from one another. Ignorance causes drives and impulses, and drives and impulses cause ignorance, just as reeds lean on one another to stand, and if one reed falls, the other reeds also fall. This is true of all things in the universe. The one creates the many, and the many the one. If we look deeply, we can see the one in the many and the many in the one. During that same retreat season, several Brahmins conspired to falsely accuse the Buddha of sleeping with a woman and making her pregnant. They found an attractive, young Brahmana woman named Sinka and told her that the Buddha had caused a rapid decline in the faith of their ancestors by luring many young men to become his disciples. Anxious to protect her faith, Sinka agreed to the plan. Every day, she went to Jetavana dressed in a beautiful sari and carrying a fresh bouquet of flowers. She did not arrive in time for the Dharma talks, but waited outside the Dharma hall as people left to return home. At first, whenever anyone asked her where she was going or what she was doing, she only smiled. After several days, she answered coyly, "I'm going where I'm going." After several weeks of such vague comments, she began to answer, "I'm going to visit monk Gautama." And finally, she was heard to exclaim, "Sleeping at Jetavana is delightful." Such words burned the ears of many people. Some lay people began to feel doubts and suspicions. but no one said anything. One day, Sinka came to one of the Buddha's Dharma talks. Her belly was noticeably round. In the middle of the Buddha's discourse, she stood up and loudly said, "Teacher Gautama, you speak eloquently about the Dharma. You are held in high esteem. But you care nothing for this poor woman made pregnant by you. The child I carry is your own. Are you going to take responsibility for your own child?" A wave of shock passed through the community. Everyone looked up at the Buddha. The Buddha only smiled calmly and replied, "Miss, only you and I can know whether or not your claims are true." The Buddha's calm smile made Sinka feel uneasy, but she retorted, "That's right, only you and I know whether my claims are true." The community could no longer suppress their astonishment. Several people stood up in anger. Sinka suddenly felt afraid the people would beat her. She looked for a way to escape, but in her panic, she ran into a post and stumbled. As she strained to stand back up, a large round block of wood fell from where it was tied onto her abdomen and landed on her foot. She cried out in pain and grabbed her crushed toes. Her stomach was now perfectly flat. A sigh of relief rose from the crowd. Several people began laughing and others derided Sinka. Bhikkhuni Kema stood up and gently assisted Sinka out of the hall. When the two women were gone, the Buddha resumed his Dharma talk as if nothing had happened. The Buddha spoke, "Community, the way of enlightenment can tear down the walls of ignorance, just as light can disperse the shadows. The Four Noble Truths, impermanence, non-self, dependent co-arising, the Four Establishments of Mindfulness, the Seven Factors of Awakening, the Three Gates, and the Noble Eightfold Path have all been proclaimed to the world like a lion's roar, dispelling countless false doctrines and narrow views. The lion is king of the beasts. When he leaves his den, he stretches and gazes out over all the directions. Before seeking his prey, he lets forth a mighty roar that causes the other creatures to tremble and flee. Birds fly high, crocodiles dive beneath the water, foxes slip into their holes. Even village elephants, decked in fancy belts and ornaments and shaded by golden parasols, run away at the sound of that roar. Community, the proclamation of the way of enlightenment is like that lion's roar. False doctrines fear and tremble. When impermanence, non-self, and dependent co-arising are proclaimed, all those who have long sought false security in ignorance and forgetfulness must awaken, celestial beings as well as human beings. When a person sees the dazzling truth, he exclaims, "We embrace dangerous views for so long, taking the impermanent to be permanent, and believing in the existence of a separate self. We took suffering to be pleasure, and look at the temporary as if it were eternal. We mistook the false for the true. Now the time has come to tear down all the walls of forgetfulness and false views. Community, the way of enlightenment allows humanity to remove the thick veil of false views. When an enlightened person appears, the way echoes like the majestic sound of the rising tide. When the tide rises, all false views are swept away. Community, people are easily caught by four traps. The first is attachment to sensual desires. The second is attachment to narrow views. The third is doubt and suspicion. The fourth is false view of self. The way of enlightenment helps people overcome the four great traps. Community, the teaching on dependent co-arising, will enable you to overcome every obstacle and trap. Contemplate the nature of interdependence in your daily life, in your body, feelings, mind, and objects of mind. The next day in the main hall, Ananda repeated the Buddha's Dharma talk. He named it Sutra of the Lion's Roar. That retreat season, many bhikkhus fell ill with malaria. Many grew thin and pale and no longer had the strength to go out begging for themselves. Other bhikkhus readily shared their food with them, but much of the food contained rice and curry, which was too harsh on the stomachs of the sick. The Buddha gave permission to lay disciples to prepare special dishes for the sick bhikkhus. They cooked food that was easily digested, such as rice porridge with wholesome ingredients like honey, milk, cane sugar, and oil. Thanks to these foods, the bhikkhus slowly regained their health. One day after sitting meditation, the Buddha heard the squawking of a great number of crows. When he went to investigate, he found a number of bhikkhus tossing the special foods prepared for the sick bhikkhus to the crows. They explained that a number of brothers had felt too ill to eat that morning. The hour of noon had passed and the bhikkhus were not to partake of food after noon. When the Buddha asked why they didn't save the special foods for the following day, he was reminded that food was not to be kept overnight. The Buddha told them that sick bhikkhus could be relieved of the precept not to eat anything after the noon hour, and if certain foods would keep, they could be saved overnight. Not long after, a physician from the capital paid a visit to the Venerable Sariputta. He suggested that sick bhikkhus be served a dish of special herbs and ingredients. Thanks to that, the bhikkhus regained their health more quickly. Chapter 62. Sariputta's Roar. When the retreat season ended, Venerable Sariputta bid farewell to the Buddha before traveling to spread the Dharma. The Buddha wished him a calm and safe journey, and a body and mind free of all cares. He said he hoped Sariputta's efforts to spread the Dharma would not meet with too many obstacles. Venerable Sariputta thanked the Lord and then departed. That noon a bhikkhu came to the Buddha and complained of being mistreated by Sariputta. He said, "I asked Venerable Sariputta where he was going. He refused to answer me, and in fact pushed me out of his way so hard that I was knocked to the ground." He made no apology but continued on his way. The Buddha turned to Ananda and said, "I do not think Sariputta will have traveled too far yet. Send one of the novices after him. Tonight we will hold a community meeting in Jeta Dharma Hall." Ananda did as the Buddha asked, and by late afternoon Venerable Sariputta had returned to the monastery with the novice. The Buddha told him, "Sariputta, tonight the entire community will meet in the Dharma Hall. A bhikkhu has accused you of knocking him to the ground without apologizing." That afternoon Venerables Moggallana and Ananda visited all corners of the monastery to announce the evening meeting. They said, "You are invited to attend a meeting in the Dharma Hall tonight. Tonight Brother Sariputta will have a chance to offer his lion's roar." Not one bhikkhu was absent from the hall that evening. Everyone wanted to see how Sariputta would respond to those who had for so long begrudged his position in the Sangha. Venerable Sariputta was one of the Buddha's most trusted disciples, and because of that he was the object of much misunderstanding and jealousy. Some of the bhikkhus felt the Buddha placed too much trust in Sariputta. They felt Sariputta wielded too great an influence. When some bhikkhus were corrected by the Buddha, they mistakenly blamed Sariputta for pointing out their errors to the Buddha. Some bhikkhus felt almost a hatred for Sariputta. They were unable to forget that some years before, the Buddha had invited Sariputta to share his seat. Venerable Ananda recalled one monk named Kokalika, who had lived at Jetavana 8 years earlier. Kokalika hated Sariputta and Moggallana so much that not even the Buddha himself could persuade him otherwise. Kokalika said that Sariputta and Moggallana were both hypocrites whose actions were motivated by ambition. The Buddha met privately with him and said that these two elders were sincere and that their actions arose from loving kindness. But Kokalika's mind was filled with jealousy and hatred, and finally, he left the monastery, joined the Venerable Devadatta in Rajagaha, and became one of Devadatta's closest associates. It was because of these kinds of problems that Ananda had been reluctant to accept the responsibility of becoming the Buddha's attendant. Without the conditions he had suggested, such as not sleeping in the same room or sharing the same food with the Buddha, Ananda knew that many brothers would resent him also. Some brothers felt they did not receive enough of the Buddha's attention. Ananda knew that such feelings could lead to anger and hatred, and could even lead some to abandon the Buddha, their teacher. Ananda also recalled a woman in Kalmasadamya village in Kosambi named Magandika, who grew to hate the Buddha when she did not receive special attention from him. She was a beautiful Brahmana woman. The Buddha was 44 years old when she met him. She was immediately attracted to him, and as her feelings grew stronger, she longed to know if the Buddha felt any special regard for her. Magandika did everything she could think of to receive his special attention, but the Buddha treated her as he did everyone else. In the end, her affections turned to hatred. When she later became the wife of King Udina of Vamsa, she used her position and influence to spread rumors and insults about the Buddha. She even pressured the authorities into forbidding the Buddha to give public Dharma talks. When Samavati, a beloved concubine of King Udina, became a disciple of the Buddha, Magandika found ways to make her suffer. Disturbed by all of this, Ananda suggested to the Buddha that they leave Kosambi to spread the Dharma in a more hospitable place. The Buddha asked him, "If we go somewhere else and meet with insult and difficulty there too, what should we do?" Ananda replied, "Move on to some other place." The Buddha disagreed. "That would not be correct, Ananda. We must not become discouraged every time we meet with difficulty. Solutions should be sought in the very midst of hardship. Ananda, if we practice equanimity, we will not be bothered by insults and slander. The people who slander us cannot harm us. They only harm themselves. When a man spits at the sky is not sullied. The spit falls back in the face of the one who spat." Ananda had no worries about Sariputta's ability to deal with the present situation. Venerable Sariputta was rightfully trusted by the Buddha. He was a truly virtuous and worthy elder of the Sangha. Because of his deep insight, the Buddha depended on his help in guiding the Sangha. He was the author of several sutras, including the Hattipadopana Sutta, the Sutra on the Elephant's Footprints, in which he spoke about the relation of the four elements to the five aggregates in an original way, based on the fruits of his own practice. When the Buddha entered the Dharma hall, all the bhikkhus rose to their feet. He motioned for them to be seated again, and then sat down himself. He motioned to Venerable Sariputta to sit on a low chair placed next to him. The Buddha spoke to Sariputta, "A bhikkhu has accused you of knocking him down and not apologizing. Do you have anything to say about this?" Venerable Sariputta stood and joined his palms. He bowed first to the Buddha and then to the community. He said, "Lord, a monk who does not practice, who does not contemplate the body in the body, who is not mindful of the actions of the body, such a monk could knock down a fellow monk and leave him there without apologizing. Lord, I still remember the lesson you gave 14 years ago to Bhikkhu Rahula. He was only 18 years old at the time. You taught him to contemplate the nature of earth, water, fire, and air in order to nourish and develop the four virtues of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Although your teaching was directed at Rahula, I learned from it also. I have made efforts to observe that teaching throughout the past 14 years, and I have often thanked you inwardly. Lord, I have practiced to be more like earth. Earth is wide and open, and has the capacity to receive and transform. Whether people toss pure and fragrant substances such as flowers, perfume, or fresh milk upon the earth, or toss unclean and foul-smelling substances such as excrement, urine, blood, mucus, and spit upon it, the earth receives it all equally with neither grasping nor aversion. Lord, I have contemplated to make my mind and body more like the earth. A monk who does not contemplate the body in the body, who is not mindful of the actions of the body, such a monk could knock down a brother monk and leave him without apologizing. Such is not my way. Lord, I have practiced to be more like water. Whether someone pours fragrant substances or defiled substances into water, the water receives them both without grasping or aversion. Water is immense and flowing and has the capacity to transform and purify. Respected Buddha, I have contemplated to make my body and mind more like water. A monk who does not contemplate the body in the body, who is not mindful of the actions of the body, such a monk could knock down a brother monk and leave him without apologizing. Such is not my way. Lord, I have practiced to be more like fire. Fire burns all things, the beautiful as well as the impure, without grasping or aversion. Fire has the ability to burn, purify, and transform. Respected Buddha, I have contemplated to make my body and mind more like fire. A monk who does not contemplate the body in the body, who is not mindful of the actions of the body, such a monk could knock down a brother monk and leave him without apologizing. Such is not my way. Lord, I have practiced to be more like air. The air carries all manner of smells, good and bad, without grasping or aversion. Air has the capacity to transform, purify, and release. Respected Buddha, I have contemplated to make my body and mind become more like the air. A monk who does not contemplate the body in the body, who is not mindful of the actions of the body, such a monk could knock down a brother monk and leave him without apologizing. Such is not my way. Lord, like a small untouchable child with tattered clothes who clasps a bowl and begs in the street for scraps of food, I practice to hold no false pride or arrogance. I have tried to make my heart like the heart of an untouchable child's heart. I have tried to practice humility, not daring to place myself higher than others. Respected Buddha, a monk who does not contemplate the body in the body, who is not mindful of the actions of the body, such a monk could knock down a brother monk and leave him without apologizing. Such is not my way. Venerable Sariputta was prepared to continue speaking, but his accuser could bear no more. He stood up and draped a corner of his Sanghati robe over his shoulder, and then bowed to the Buddha. With his palms joined, he confessed, "Lord Buddha, I have violated the precepts. I have borne false witness against Venerable Sariputta. I confess my transgression before you and the entire community. I vow to observe my precepts in the future." The Buddha said, "It is good that you have confessed your transgression before the community. We accept your confession." Venerable Sariputta joined his palms and said, "I bear no grudge against my brother, and I ask him to forgive anything I may have done to upset him in the past." The bhikkhu bowed to Sariputta with his palms joined. Sariputta returned his bow. Happiness filled the Dharma hall. Venerable Ananda stood up and said, "Brother Sariputta, please stay with us for a few more days. Your brothers would welcome a chance to spend more time with you." Venerable Sariputta smiled his acceptance. With the retreat season over, the Buddha traveled to many villages in the countryside. One day he spoke in Kesaputta, a village which belonged to the Kalama clan. Many young people gathered to hear him. They had all heard about the monk Gautama, but this was the first opportunity they had to meet him in person. One young man joined his palms and spoke, "Teacher, for a long time, many Brahmana priests have come to Kesaputta in order to teach their various doctrines. Each priest claims that his doctrine is superior to others' doctrines. This has confused us. We do not know which path to follow. In fact, we have lost faith in all the doctrines. We have heard that you are an enlightened master. Can you tell us whom we should believe and whom we should not? Who speaks the truth and who is merely spreading false doctrines? The Buddha answered, I can understand why you have given rise to doubts. Friends, do not be hasty to believe a thing even if everyone repeats it, or even if it is written in Holy Scripture or spoken by a teacher revered by the people. Accept only those things which accord with your own reason, things which the wise and virtuous support, things which in practice bring benefit and happiness. Abandon those things which do not accord with your own reason, which are not supported by the wise and virtuous, and which in practice do not bring benefit and happiness. The Kalamas asked the Buddha to tell them more. He said, Friends, suppose there is a person ruled by greed, anger, and ignorance. Will his greed, anger, and ignorance bring him happiness or suffering? The people answered, Master, greed, anger, and ignorance will cause such a person to commit acts that bring suffering to himself and others. Is living by greed, anger, and ignorance supported by the wise and virtuous? No, Master. The Buddha continued, Take the example of someone who lives according to loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, who makes others happy by relieving their suffering, who rejoices over the good fortune of others, and who treats others without discrimination. Will such qualities bring that person happiness or suffering? Teacher, such qualities will bring happiness to the person and to all those around him. Are loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity supported and encouraged by the wise and virtuous? Yes, Master. My friends, you are already qualified to discern which things to accept and which things to discard. Believe and accept only those things which accord with your own reason, those things which are supported by the wise and virtuous, and those things which in practice bring benefit and happiness to yourselves and others. Discard things which oppose these principles. The Kalama youth were encouraged by the Buddha's words. They saw that his teaching did not require unconditional faith. The Buddha's way truly respected freedom of thought. Many of the Kalamas asked to be accepted by the Buddha as disciples that day.